it's a good Thursday morning.
It's a great Thursday morning. March 14th. March Madness. It's beginning. Tournaments. Yeah, we're not going to get into that. We're going to hop right in.
What?
To intensive triathlon talk and all things scientific and numbers and data to tickle your fancy on this beautiful Thursday that we're having.
No March Madness talk, huh?
No, it hasn't really started.
I know. We'll get enough of that.
We'll definitely get in plenty of it for the rest of the month, especially if our team, either of our teams or both, put on any kind of show up or run. So we'll delay that for another couple days, and I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy that. But hey, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Crushing Iron Triathlon Podcast 250.
Here it is, 250, man. Who would have guessed?
Not me.
Not
or
me?
anybody else. Or anybody else I know. 250. That's a lot of episodes. I'm going to give myself a quick little pat on the back, and let's get back to work.
Yep. Nice job, man. Let's work.
Thanks you. Yeah, thanks you too. Nice and consistent. But no, 250 is awesome. We are, as you know, 25% of the way to 1,000. And maybe we'll do something special on the day. But until then, we'll just continue to churn out podcasts every Monday and Thursday to the best of our ability. And if you're just joining us, we appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to subscribe on iTunes. Go back through our catalog. We have all kinds of topics that we cover, both in and out of the sport of triathlon. And then if you want to, while you're listening, you can also, hop on your smart device and peruse our website, crushingiron.com, where we have all types of information on the other things that we do with training plans and coaching, our triathlon and swim camps, swim analysis, Mike's blog, other videos, and information on our club program as well. So take a look, dive in, sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and I sort of want to give a shout out to everybody who's listening to this podcast. It is podcast 250. And honestly, I think what that says is we've got a bunch of people that are trying to do something, make some changes in their life. And so many people in life just talk about doing a lot of stuff and go through life wishing they could be in shape or, and they have the power to do something about it and they don't. And I think that's part of it. I think that's part of what makes this Crushing Iron group of people, like in our Facebook group and everything, such awesome people, is they care and they try to do something and they stick with it and they're actually making changes, And sometimes they're harder than others, but it's, I don't care if you're doing a full or a sprint or a couch to 5K, you're out there doing something, and that's what matters. Is, as you mentioned a few podcasts ago, you don't have to be. Or just because you're a triathlete doesn't mean you have to do a triathlon. Just do stuff, Just be in the process of trying to continually get better and grow. And no, I totally agree with that. I think it's always a great reminder for us all to have is that we should all be kind of in the constant progression of trying to improve ourselves, which is tough, and it's a tough balance when we're as athletes and as husbands and wives and friends and brothers and sisters and coworkers and bosses, like we're always being pulled in different directions on being demanded of, and sometimes we neglect ourselves. But hey, be the best version of yourself, be the best athlete you can be in the specific season of life that you're in, and continue to push the boundaries as best you can in a responsible way. So keep it up, and we'll continue to do our best to give you content that hopefully helps guide you in that direction. Yeah. And I do want to say, I was talking to somebody yesterday about, it was a younger girl.
You got a lot of things to say today.
I know.
I mean, when you start at 9, when you start those extra 15 minutes that I gave you to start the podcast, you're like churning out conversational topics like right off the bat.
I told you, man, it's 15 minutes of sleep does me wonders.
I figured as much.
No, so but actually, it's weird because I mean, maybe it's the binaural beats that I've been listening to. Sort of that. Have you heard of those? Or they just sort of that meditational music, but it's kind of a.
You lost me on that one.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Oh, I was talking to a younger woman at the coffee shop yesterday, and she was talking about getting into she always wanted to do a triathlon or something, and we were talking about just exercise in general. I think she was in like 28 or 29, and we were talking about how, the thing of it is as you get older, it gets really hard to exercise. And the thing of it is like starting today is the way to do it, because you have to, it's so much easier if you've continued doing it, right?
Totally
agree.
agree.
If you take time away, and especially, like I did that in my 40s, maybe for about 4 years, I just went down a crazy road and looked up one day, and thankfully I had a huge past of being in sports and being athletic and stuff like that, so I made it back in. But if you let it slip out of your grasp, it's very difficult to get going again. And I honestly think it's mandatory as you get older to do stuff like we're doing and whatever, hitting the gym, doing physical activity, because movement is the grease to your joints and your body, and it leads to a happier, healthier life. And I think that exercise is such a huge part of that. And we have a lot of people in this group that do it, and just that momentum and being around people like that is an overall good thing, I think, for life.
No, I totally agree with that. Did anything else come out of this conversation with this 28, 29-year-old?
We'll see.
No, I'm just kidding. No, it is. It's I think it's, and that kind of goes.
Hang on, I got a text from her right here.
Stop it.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my gosh. Stop it. But no, anyway, it kind of goes in lines with what I want to talk about today, but I think that, I think one of the things that's hardest, and we talk about, trying to balance things back and forth all the time, and making time for things for opportunities, like you were saying with your chat with this young lady, was, continually finding ways to make time to do exercise and doing it day to day and not going through spurts, and managing overall volume and managing overall training load is, I think it's one of the more one of the topics that's not talked about a ton and when you listen to other podcasts, or you read articles that every single outlet wants to put out every other day of the week. It's about how do you manage volume? How do athletes manage volume? How do they adapt? How do they plan? How do they kind of look at their overall season? And a lot of athletes would like to predict everything. And again, that's just not something that you can predict. I was joking with an athlete the other day. He's racing a marathon this weekend, and it had this like really thought out, detailed, constructed, very pretty breakdown of these segments of the course and the exact mileage he was going to hit, or the exact pace he was going to hit. And I gave him a feedback, and basically was saying that let's just not use any of that. But I also said that sometimes I think you enjoy the act of putting together a plan more than you actually like the rest of it. And so I understand that I'd like to plan, but in terms of volume, managing an athlete's volume and what many people would just say is just their overall training load is something that can be very, very difficult if you don't, A, pay attention, and B, don't look for the specific feedbacks and conversation starters that I think you should look for as a self-coached athlete, or even as a coached athlete. And what I mean by that is, and I threw in a quote that I heard from Joe Filio, who we talk about quite frequently on this podcast. He's probably one of, if not probably the best all-around triathlon coach on the planet right now. And I think he has a male and female athlete that both won the event last weekend, the first ITU event. But anyway, he had a really great quote that I love and that we've talked about before. And he said, "Anybody can do high intensity under low chronic load. It's more what the athlete can do sustainably under a high load. That is where you can see the difference." And that is so, it's not only just so 100% true, it's also the basis of why so many athletes tend to underperform in races, is that their understanding of predictory workouts that's what should lead to execution and a specific result on race day. It's not cumulative. We talked about cumulative fatigue before, and we talked about it, kind of the same branch off of this topic in this last podcast about confidence and how you gain it. Do you gain it from repetition and consistency and overall body of work, or do you it's like looking at a resume that's 10 pages long with years and years of experience and production and great things versus the person who, just did this one great thing, but you have nothing else to work on. What's going to be more predictable? Who would you rather go with? Who would you rather hire? And when it comes to performance and training, a lot of athletes get stuck on this obsession with doing testing and doing benchmark performances and all these things, and Training Peaks does a great job of reminding you, like every other workout you do, it's like, hey, congratulations, this was your second best 1.37 K on this specific segment on Tuesdays in the evening. Congratulations. You're like, I'm winning. Thank you for my medal. Thank you for my barbell. This is
always
great.
An upside.
Always an upside. And so. But I think that one of the most understated things, and we went through this in detail, or I went through this in detail on kind of the Training Peaks data kind of breakdown I did behind the scenes at Run Camp, was explaining and showing kind of like a week to week athlete progression, and what you look for as a coach, and hopefully what you can look for as an athlete, is that it's not so much the one and done. A little March Madness in there. It's not the one and done workouts that give you the confidence or that show you how well you're doing. It's the ability to continue to push a specific level of intensity or pace or watts, while also at the same time increasing the volume and load. And this is the time of year where a lot of athletes have stuck to shorter intervals, indoor sessions, because a lot of athletes will do their periodization that way. They'll spend, November, December, January, February, March, whatever. They'll spend all of those months doing shorter high intensity work, and that's how they periodize their season. And then now it's time to get outside. It's time to turn that fast into far. It's time to turn, their engine is something they can work with. When not everybody works that way. I enjoy speed stuff, and I think it has its place, but I'm more of, building strength and durability. But now it's time to start really spreading things out, because it's going to get warmer. You're going to have more sunlight, more daylight. Getting up and doing things outside is going to happen. And so now is the time of season where your 8 to 9 hours of training might start to creep up to 10, 12, 14, 16. And the demands that they're going to have for your body are going to be much different. And I think it's a good conversation to have this time of year about balancing the intensity and the stress that your overall body is going to need to handle, and then how that should apply to, and why it should apply to, how you look at racing in general. And depending on the demands of the specific race that you're doing, I think there's just a lot to be talked about this time of year and today. Obviously, on overall volume, and maybe even more importantly, some of the signs that you're ready to bump up in volume, or you're creating too much volume for yourself. And some of the factors, that's probably a great place to start in terms of factors that you should look at or feel flexible in scaling back, and just kind of things to look at this time of year.
Yeah, are you considering that, maybe there's a late season race in your future kind of thing, or does it matter?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I think everybody, for the most part, like no one this time of year is looking to dial back volume. Mm-hmm. At least I hope not. Most people are either going to stay the same, or they're looking to either increase intensity, which when I say volume, I guess I should be specific in saying that increased stress is the same thing as saying, in intensity on the body is the same thing of saying I'm increasing volume. Like, you may have an athlete, and so that could be said for athletes who are doing short course races this time of year, but they're looking for a later season Ironman or ones that are even coming up, you're still looking at that balance of accumulated stress, and that could be like you might have something like, yeah, like I did like 18 hours this week. And to you hear like, oh my gosh, you had 18 hours of hard training. But in reality, for most age group athletes, that means like, well, that's 3 1-hour strength sessions, and that includes my rest, and I did a 1-hour swim, but I only, I was in the pool for an hour.
Yeah.
And then all my rides were super easy. And so you're going to
do that?
18 hours of, yes, they do that. It's like strength session, 1 hour.
Oops, forgot the watch is running there.
Listen, strength sessions are like football. All right, you work really hard for like 8 seconds, and then you rest for like 2 minutes. Okay, and it's like I worked hard for 60 minutes today. No, you didn't. You sat on the bench for like 35 minutes of this entire game. So don't tell me it's like the first baseman in baseball. You didn't work hard today. Anyway, so there's a lot to be talked about in terms of accumulating volume and stress, because that athlete who did 18 hours, that could be infinitely more easier or the same as an athlete who did 12 hours, but the intensity of their sessions was different. It was higher, it was more demanding. And so I think this time of year, regardless, you're looking at, as you kind of bridged from preseason race prep, preseason base training into race specific or build parts of your foundation, that it's time for you to probably start to put some of your work into longer durations, which is usually going to mean more time volume, but for some athletes it'll also mean more intensity volume, which again is just about managing stress and then understanding the expectations that stress are going to have on it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you want to kind of look at it as sort of I don't know, if somebody's doing a mid-season half and a full in the fall or something like that, or kind of, is that sort of what you're thinking about as far as?
Well, I think what I wanted to kind of, because we tend not to go in like these specific directions a lot, and because it doesn't alienate specific athletes, but I think just generally addressing the changes and some of the things you should look at, because these are things we've both gone through in terms of what happens. Like, here are some of the things that happen when it's time and you choose to increase volume, and things that need to be addressed, because you're all going to increase volume, you're all going to increase duration and intensity. Some of the biggest things to look for, in order to do that, you have to look at your life in the week that you're about to have, because again, many athletes that don't have coaches or that are self-coached, that work off training plans, the periodization and the kind of the slow ramping of volume is already set out for them. And so they basically take that and they apply it to their life. But the bad part is that these things that your life and your stress doesn't always correlate and have the ability to complement the opportunity to, again, in triathlon, apply healthy, timely volume and stress. And so again, it's a great benefit to have somebody looking on the outside and saying, oh, well, I know that you're like, great example is summertime or even right now, because spring break coming up, athletes are like, all right, I'm going on vacation, I'm traveling to so-and-so, I'm going to bring my bike, I'm going to bring my swim, I'm going to train hard while I'm gone.
Yeah, of course.
I can't miss it. And I get it. I 100% get it. I guess where I think this is a great example of how I want to address things is that I'm of the mindset of traveling is stressful on the body. Vacation is stressful on the body. You might not seem like it, but I have never met an athlete who's come back from vacation like, I got so much energy right now. I got too much. Let's just get ready to go. They're like, I am totally exhausted from vacation, or especially if they have kids. Now, if you're single, living up the life, you're probably tired for different reasons, but it's exhausting.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And what I like to tell them, like, listen, I would prefer you rest as much as possible on vacation while you're already going to be stressed and traveling is already demanding on your body. Take it easy. We'll do a couple things here and there, but nothing ton, because when you come back, and you're in your regularly scheduled programming, and you're in your routine, and things are a little more controllable, and you're not feeling so guilty for doing some things, there's where we get a better return. The week before and the week after your vacation or your break or your trip or whatever you want to call it. So we'll kind of use that as a recovery, because we want to add volume, because I've had like 2 athletes right now that are doing Oceanside 70.3 who just went on trips, and one's gone in England for like 9 or 10 days right in the middle of these kind of, their last kind of 3-week block before the race. And it's like, well, we don't want to overstress you, because then we're going to compromise and probably inhibit your ability to perform the way we want to as we get closer. And so, again, volume and increasing volume is all about recognizing the amount of stress that you're under, and then taking a look in the mirror and also saying, can I, in fact, like, open up my life to more stress at the moment? Because we're always in this cycle of 8 hours this week, 10 hours next week, 12 hours next week, and the build on those hours. But sometimes we forget how the effect that added stress comes back on our regular life in terms of now we're going to have athletes. Great example. Again, athletes are about to hop in, basically move from indoor to outdoor, cool temps to warmer temps. And I know this last weekend was warm for a lot of athletes, and I had at least 5 to 6 say, went out for my run totally underfueled. Because the stress demands are different. You can go out when it's 20, 25 degrees and run for an hour easy and not need a sip of water, but it turns into be a 65, 75 degree day out of nowhere, and you've dug yourself a hole. That's going to affect your recovery the next day. But I think the overall gist of what I'm trying to say is that increasing volume and your adaptation personally to that volume is not just something you have to look at from, what does my training peaks number say? Does it say my form and my acute training load and my CTO? All those things match that I can increase my training load. What's my HRV say? What's this say? It's like, how about what's that next week look like for you in your life? Are you going to have like 6 meetings where you travel for 4 days? Oh, okay. Guess what? It's not a good week to ramp up. It's just managing stress and understanding volume. But then within that conversation, it's understanding the amount of intensity and the type of intensity demands you need for specific distances and races, from sprint distance demands, Olympic, 70.3 and full, and the demands that you need to create within that amount of volume is different for each person.
I heard a quote the other day, and it's been interesting for me to think about, but basically the quote was, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, it's hard to over-exercise, but it's easy to under-recover.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty good.
Totally true.
Because, yeah, and back to what I was talking about in the beginning, as far as, as you get older and stuff like that, I think that's where the under-recovery piece is huge. And being able to walk away. Like say you're underfueled and you're out there and like one of your first runs and you can't, you can tell, that feeling where you just know that you're, and if you've been in the sport a while, the different feelings you can get on runs. And sometimes if you're out there, why go to that level? Sometimes you just got to walk away or, back it way down. And I mean, you got to understand, I think, your body and everything like that when you're out, and any kind of workout really. I mean, the point is, and I think the reason I wanted to bring that up is because you're talking about vacation or meetings and stress and things like that. Because if you've got something that's not, you got a big week ahead of you and things aren't going well tonight in this practice or in this workout, man, that's just a fuel for disaster. In the long run. It's
understanding and being objective in progression and saying, well, I must because it's there on paper. Like, right. And again, that's the really tough part. And I think one of the more undervalued parts of, I guess, of having the benefit of a coach is seeing that forest to the tree of being like, I know. Like, because when you work off a standard training plan, it's 12 hours, it's 12 hours, 14, 15. It's always up. that just the only thing it takes into account is the expectation of the demands of what you need to hopefully be able to accomplish and have in your tool belt on race day. It doesn't take into the account of, you know, the way that we used this analogy before, like when you're preparing for a race, you're constructing a house. And so the way you have to look at it is, if you have a person who's always going to be there every day, who's never going to skip a beat, who has all the tools they need, who's going to always work, 16-hour days to get your house ready, who has all the materials they need, it's always going to be sunshine, no one's going to get sick, they're never going to have a disruption in the timeline to construct your house when it's supposed to be ready, and it may even be done early. You're given those set of plans with those parameters and those circumstances. That's what a training plan is. Reality is, as anybody who's been in the process of having a house built or building one, and we're in our second phase, is that, but you are at the mercy. You are at the mercy of weather, of setbacks, of missed timelines, of materials, of sickness. And so if you just blindly go and expect to have this on this date, then you're just going to continue on. So if you're that person who's moving in a direction and you're just going to skip steps or assume you're going to be at steps, you're going to end up with a house with a missing door, missing shingles on the top, a couple of windows missing on the back, no back deck, missing some flooring here. But that was okay because you went through steps 1 through 1,000 in sequential order. And yeah, I mean, we missed some, but we got to move on to the next one. We got to, because that's what it says.
Yeah.
And, so does that make sense at all?
Yeah, because I was just thinking about the analogy we like to use as far as, like pro or college football or anything like that, where you have a game plan, but the other team comes out and starts doing something totally different. You have to adjust it. You can't just keep plowing ahead with your, narrow-minded game plan. Yeah.
Well, some coaches do that. But no, it's
because it's life, and things happen. It's weird that when you're saying that, I was thinking about just a lot of situations randomly that have ever happened in my life, and I'll be like, yeah, this is going good. We're gonna do this, and then something happens. I'm like, oh, why me? Why me? How am I gonna? It always figures. It just figures instead of just stepping back and going, okay, where's the upside here, or how can I learn from this, or whatever. You just kind of get sunk in that mental trap of like, woe is me, and the best plans, man. I had this thing planned out. I got to, I'm cruising along at mile 87 and I get a flat. Why? Everything was perfect. Now the race is ruined. How can I?
But so it is. It's that obsession with sequential order of completion. That's how we get. Listen, hey, newsflash. How many of you still crushing it about those January 1st New Year's resolutions? That's what I thought.
Write us in. Let us know how your resolutions are
you forgot about it. And how quick are to make decisions 3 weeks ago it's cold and dreary and rainy and you got no daylight and everybody's like, you know what? I'm probably not even going to race this year. I'm just
not only am I not working out, I'm not even going to race.
I'm not even going to race. I'm going to work. I'm doing nothing. I got nothing, man. It's just life's it's just gloomy. Warmer weather. Extra hour, and you're like, dude, I'm probably going to race 8 or 9 times this year. I think I'm going to probably put in 15 hours of training this week. I'm back, baby. I got it. And so it's just a reminder.
And then the next day.
Exactly.
Because you overtrained.
Exactly. It is. It's that under recovering, but it's understanding everything that happens in your life that how much of your life is not training. And how much of your life that's not training actually affects. I think sometimes we forget about that aspect of the kind of symbiotic relationship that we all have. Is that yes, but we want training to impact our lives in a positive way. Nothing can impact your life in a positive way if it isn't totally intertwined. And sometimes when it gets this time of year, when we start to add things on in terms of volume and intensity and stress, just because we assume we have to.
Mm-hmm.
We forget, again, that yes, training should complement our life, but if it complements our life, then in turn, our life has an effect on our training. or is affected by our training, and therefore our life affects our training. And just because it's time to bump up, and this is more of a tough conversation that I have to have sometimes with athletes who have gone through injuries or gone through setbacks or have lost motivation or have got really sick, and they find themselves 4 weeks, 5 weeks out from a marathon or a big race, and they're like, yeah, but I should be doing X, Y, and Z right now. Like, I don't know how I'm feeling like. And one of the toughest conversations I have to have with them, and most difficult for me as a coach, I don't think all coaches are like this, I think a lot of them are, but not all of them, is that I have to say, it's not my job to train you to where you thought you would be or where you expected to be. It's my job to train you where you are. I look at how you've done. I look at where I think we should be next to help us get to the next step. Just because we missed steps 6 through 20 because you were sick or because you were injured or because you had no motivation or because work was dominating you, and you just kind of it's not responsible of me, nor is it how I think or feel about our partnership to then say, you know what, you've only been doing 1 hour runs, you know what we're ready for, baby? We're 5 weeks out for a marathon. You know what that means? 20 miles. Let's do it. Just for the sake of filling in the order of the progression that most athletes are obsessed by. That's not my job. Sorry. It's to take you and understand and let you understand where you actually are. You're here today. This is where we've been. This is where we are. This is where I believe we can move towards next week, not 80 weeks down the road. And so, yeah, when you miss weeks, when you miss months, it's not just like you get a pass. I'm sorry. You don't get a fitness pass or a durability pass or anything. You just don't get a pass. You have to understand and be okay with, this is where I'm at. And as a coach, you have to be really responsible, and sometimes to the not detriment, but to the disgust sometimes of your athlete. Like, yeah, but guess what? We're going to be as ready as we can be given how things have gone. But just because the last ride you did was 2 hours and you haven't been able to get in the last 5 or 6 long rides, doesn't mean I'm going to jump you up to a 4.5 hour ride just for the sake of being you're 5 weeks out from your race. And so it's understanding stress and volume, but it's understanding like how finite of a plan you should have as an athlete, whether you're coach or self-coach or as a coach working with an athlete, is that your plan is very, very simple. And yes, you can work in microcycles or macrocycles, or you can look at months and months and months, and you can generally an idea of where you want to go and how you want to progress in the roughest of drafts, in all pencil, like real faded, like with just total rough. But none of it matters if you can't do steps 1, 2, and 3. Because if you can't do steps 1, 2, and 3, you're sure as hell can't do steps 4, 5, and 6. But so many athletes will find themselves doing steps 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 15, 16, 31, 30 break. Because they just expected that this had to be done when they don't recognize where they actually are. And so as a coach, you look at their past, you look at where they've been, where they are, and then the next week is basically just, here's what I see here's what I see that needs to be done based on where we want to go, but also more importantly, what is the likelihood of your ability to be able to actually do this? Not just because it's 12 weeks out, not just because if that's why you don't jump somebody from a 5-mile run to a 16-mile run just because. But it happens. And again, it's about understanding volume, and what's the most important aspect of it is that you have to be ready for it. It's about readiness. It's not about just filling in the holes.
Well, there's got to be a hack for that, isn't there?
Of course there is.
Get
Of course there's
from 5 to 16 miles.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the theory on that, I mean, how you talked about going into a race, it's better to be 100% undertrained than 3% overtrained or whatever that case is. But yeah, if you got like I think you're talking about obviously rational approaches and realistic approaches for best long-term benefit. But if you're falling behind the 8 ball in your race, I mean, there's no sense in trying to catch up in training. You just kind of got to, you can catch up a little bit on certain workouts maybe, but to go from, say, like you said, 5 miles to 15 miles of running overnight is probably pretty stupid. And you might as well kind of just build it up as close as you can and just save that 15-miler for the race day,
Yeah. Go in. It's at that point, it's just better to go in as undertrained as you possibly can be. And just, that's it. And don't try. I remember a conversation I had with Lee Wilson, who's a friend of mine, a friend of both of ours, owner of the wonderful National Running Company and former Oregon runner. And it was a couple weeks for, I think, my best open marathon where I was woefully undertrained. And I decided to do this marathon about 2 or 3 weeks out, which is pretty common to me back then. And
so you've learned by example.
I've learned by example, and I emailed him. And I said, "Hey, man, I'm doing the marathon, and I got 3 weeks. I think it was like 2.5, maybe 3 weeks max." I said, "What?" He said, just a couple 7-8 milers at this point." He said, "It's better to be so fresh, so you've got that buffer, than to try to sneak in anything over an 8-mile, 9-mile run." And I was like, okay, I think I can definitely roll with that. And I ended up negative.
Did you even have time for that back then?
No, I didn't. And I threw in a negative split on the marathon. I think the only time I ran like a 1:36 back half. But it was just that, like, hey, like, we are where we are. Let's go in so fresh that the buffer between fatigue and fresh is so distant because you haven't built up any training fatigue and you haven't had time, because the purpose of training obviously is for your body to adapt to load and volume and fatigue so that it can become resistant to fatigue. But that takes time. So the closer that you get to a race, if you're trying to play catch up, all you're doing is ruining and drowning the fatigue resistant reserves that you're going to really, really want to have on race day. Because fatigue resistance and adaptation doesn't occur in 2 weeks. It doesn't occur after just simply one workout. It happens over consistent days upon weeks upon months and upon years. I know that's like the worst word an athlete can ever hear.
Years? Yeah, that's
years.
A bad one, man. I don't want to
Guess
hear
what,
it.
guys? It's going to take you years. It's going to take you years. Years and years and years to accumulate enough adaptation to be resistant to so much fatigue that you have gained your highest level of fitness. It will take you years. Years. But months and months and months can show you how resistant to fatigue you can become. Because especially, and we talk about long distance racing because we do it all. That's where we spend a lot of our time. But it's the marathon's the same way. It's not so much how fast you can go. It's about who slows down the least. And if you don't do things and you don't accumulate time and volume, you don't do it appropriately, then you're never going to get to a point where you can accumulate enough to create the level of resistance that racing demands in order to do it well. You can be the weekend warrior who has no time or makes no time during the week, so they crush themselves and dominate themselves to do these epic workouts every Saturday and Sunday, and then they're wrecked for 5 days and can't imagine why they don't have any energy or motivation to get out and do work again. But that's where they hang their hat, is their ability to to do these big PR sessions, and we posted Cody Beal's Anatomy of an Ironman Win Part 1. I posted a few months ago in the closed Crushing Iron Facebook group, and then yesterday or last night, Sam Browning posted the Part 2, and it's all gold. Everybody should read it. But he says, I think everyone's like favorite line he says, "Let me assure you that there were some good days and there are plenty of miserable ones. But the overwhelming majority of days were decidedly meh. Unremarkable, not epic, challenging but not crushing, and consequently consistent above all else." And that is how everyone should look at their training, but very few want to, because they can't let go of the PR days or I have to show myself what I'm able to do today, and if I'm not, then I don't really know what I'm going to do, because how am I going to predict my performance? And again, it's this. Had an athlete who took 2 days off because he was sick, and he hopped in the pool and like absolutely smashed it. And he was like, "Hey man," he's like, maybe I should take a couple days off more often." And I was like, no. I was like, this is actually just a small glimpse of what it feels like to be tapered. But the long course rate, the demands of long course racing it's all about fatigue resistance from the time you step in the water. That's why like these individual half marathons and 56-mile time trials and going over the distance, like doing the distance is okay, but it's not great. It doesn't make anything good. It just means the distance. It doesn't mean your body has created enough fatigue resistance in order to be able to do it well at a higher speed or at a higher demand or at a higher intensity. And these are the different demands and questions that we have to ask ourselves is if I'm trying to improve, then it's not about doing the distance. It's about doing it faster, doing it better, being less tired. Are you going to be tired at the end of your race? Absolutely. Well, you sure as hell better be, or you didn't give it your all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just the completion of the distance. It's how fast can I cover it, and this is the biggest difference you see in different levels of athletes is that, and that's why heart rate zones and stuff are so variant, and you can't take them. You have to take them with a grain of salt with different athletes and where they are in their life cycle, because the fittest athletes can hold the higher durations for longer. The fitter an athlete gets, they're no longer racing their 70.3 bike in the 70% range. If they're really, really, really fit and they've done for a long time, they can race at the 80% range. So again, it's not about completion of the distance. It's about raising fatigue resistance and being able to hold intensity for longer and make that sustainable so you can continue to improve. And when it comes to increasing in volume and intensity, again, it's the question you should ask yourself is before every week, it's like, what's the percentage that I can accumulate this amount of volume this week so it is of benefit to me. It's not going to crush me. It's not going to crumble me. It's not going to make me sick or injured. It's something that is attainable and seems logical. It's not jumping from 12 to 16 because in the next week you're probably going to be crushed or you're going to enter an overtraining state. So it's a hard balance, but it's a discussion that you should have with yourself and understanding not just the demands of what you're trying to take on, but also are you able to withstand some of those demands? And if you're not, then you need to quit being so demanding of those demands and how they play within the realm of your life at this time.
Well, I think that weekend warrior, I mean, as much as that has been thrown around forever, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in really looking at that, because I think a lot of us do that, and I don't even think it needs to be weekend all the time. I think there's some weekday warriors too, and just whenever it kind of fits in. And I was thinking about what you were saying about that years and years. It takes years, and it does take years. When I started, I had this kind of false impression in my mind, and I did pretty well my first couple of years or whatever. But It's been 6 years, and I feel like I'm just now starting to come around to what you're talking about. But that said, there's no reason that might have been able to be, couldn't have been maybe 3 or 4 years if I would have stuck, if I would have followed what we're talking about a little bit better. You know what I mean? Just that consistent, don't overdo it, just be consistent. That same guy, Lee, that you're talking about that ran at Oregon, I always talk about the thing. I always used to ask him, man, how do I get faster at running? And he would just always shake his head, and it was always that thing. He'd always say to me, the only way I know how to get faster at running is just to run more. And and he didn't say go out and run hard all the time or whatever. He's just get out there and run and be consistent with it and don't kill yourself. And I think that weekend warrior piece is like, especially if we kind of neglect the week, and you're just like, because you look at your schedule, of course, right? And you've got a 4-hour ride and a 2-hour run and a little run off the bike on Saturday, and that's a 7 or 8 hour weekend. You're like, that's all. A lot of people, I think, really, especially when you get started in this, you look at your week and you kind of just sort of glance over the week, and then you look at that big weekend and you're like, I got to be ready. Saturday morning, man, is when it's on. It's on. So, and then you neglect, maybe the 30-minute run on Tuesday. That it's like, whatever. That doesn't. But that's like the secret. Is that week is just sitting there, sort of like as the little fundamentals of everything. And if you don't learn those or practice those or do the little things during the week, the hour to hour and a half ride hard or whatever the case may be, you're not doing yourself any favors by skipping ahead. It's sort of like skipping chapters all the time.
You're not. It's such a great way. You're not doing yourself any favors. It might seem that way, but it's again, it's like the perfect sum of like everything that's wrong with the world we live in. It's shortcut after shortcut after shortcut after shortcut. There's nothing more dangerous than a lazy ass person. All they want to do is take shortcuts. All they want to do is spend time finding their way around. All they want to do is do things they shouldn't. All for the sake of, I don't want to spend 12 months doing this. How about 3? And who cares about the risk that it might put towards me or anybody else? I ain't got time for this. What I do have time to do is do something really risky and dumb, by just the fact that I'm lazy. And it's about doing yourself a favor in the long run, not what's doing your ego a favor in a 12-hour span that's going to make you feel good on Strava and Instagram to all your buddies. It's like, how are you going to do yourself a favor in the long run? And in 3 years, you look back and be like, man, I've been doing myself a lot of favors. I'm still doing this, and I'm still getting better, and I'm listening to my body. I'm taking myself, in the right direction. I'm being smart about it, and I'm not doing too much. And I have an athlete that I work with who is like the ultimate example of doing yourself a favor. I've been working with her. Working with me is not the favor that she's done, but we've been together for going on 6 years, and she has improved every year, even as she's gotten older, and was on her first 70.3 podium last year. And she doesn't use a power meter. She doesn't use a heart rate monitor. She just works hard, but she is emphatic about listening to her body, taking a day off when she doesn't feel like it, because I think sometimes people think that cautious is being weak. Being cautious with your body is being too fragile, or just toughen it up. Or how about not breaking something? Doing yourself a favor and allowing yourself more opportunities in the future instead of wasting and trying to seize an opportunity that seems too risky at the moment. She's outstanding at it, and she wouldn't be nearly as successful as she is without having she's incredibly objective, and listens to her body and will just say, hey, I'm not running today, or I'm taking the day easier than I want to, or I'm not sure about this. Let's talk about it. And we talk about it. But she's always doing herself and her body a favor. She'll never do any, she'll never do any training risky behavior, and I think that's something that we I think that athletes, especially triathletes, that when it's all about beat yesterday and go big or go home, or hashtag do epic shit, I'm like, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
You sure?
Yeah.
I thought you liked that.
Like hashtag do epic shit one time.
Yeah,
and then have nothing else to show for it.
Yeah.
Congrats. How about do yourself a favor and be smart and be able to do this for years and years and years, and generally just zip it.
Yeah. Enjoy. Yeah, or enjoy life.
What the hell? I mean, what is epic? People use that word all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Epic,
like
dude.
10 years ago, people started using it. I was like, that's kind of cool. And then about a week later, I was like,
dude, it's epic. Greatest player of all time. There's currently like 6,420 greatest of all times as we sit here.
Yeah.
Probably close to 1 million greatest games of all times, greatest comebacks of all times, most epic displays. It is epic. Dude, you just ran for 45 miles on the trails. Congrats. It was not epic. Just let's chill.
No, because they ran through like a mud puddle.
That's right. It's epic, baby.
So no, but I think it might have been that same conversation I was listening to with the under recovery. With somebody was saying, it's like, as far as taking it easy or listening to your body, it's they were using that what'd they say, that line, just sweat it out. If you feel something coming on, just go sweat it out. And they're like, there's no sweating it out. If you feel something coming on, take a rest and have it last 2 days rather than go out and crush your immune system and have it be around for 2 weeks.
Yep, had that same conversation with an athlete who had like some really, really bad congestion, was feeling like really, really, really bad headaches and stuff, and he's like, I'm gonna head to the steam room. Like, why? Like, and if you do, don't sit in it for too long, because you're like, I think sometimes people forget. Yeah, like people forget, like being in extreme heat temperatures causes stress on your body. And yeah, I get some of it's to like, kick in their, immune response and it'll fight things. But at the same time, it's also like your body has to have energy to fight whatever it is that's going on. Like if you're super duper stressed and you're not sleeping a ton, don't expect to get better quick, because your body needs energy and rest in order to combat whatever issue it is you're having. So yeah, I mean, do epic recoveries instead.
Do epic recoveries. Yeah, I like that. I mean,
yeah, we can hit that one.
Yeah.
Do epic recovery. Be epic at recovering, okay? Keep everything else just standard and boring and meh, but be an epic recoverer.
I'm all yeah.
Hashtag epic recovery.
Well, I mean,
see if we can get that trending on MySpace tomorrow.
Have you been by MySpace lately? It's looking pretty good.
Dude, you know me, it took me like forever to even get on Facebook, but yeah, no, I'm definitely not on MySpace.
I think I still have a page out there.
You probably do. You're probably, that 28, 29-year-old's probably looking to see if you're on there.
Very active on MySpace. I think I got to go rearrange my top friends on there, actually. Remember? They had the... that was like... that really like signifies like that was the... like encapsulates the whole ridiculous nature of social media in general. It's like MySpace had this list that you could put your top 5 friends. And I just think back to how ridiculous that is. Can you imagine like if Facebook had top 5 friends and how much angst and anxiety that would cause, kids and teenagers and us young adults? Like if you fell out of my top 5 friends after a bad podcast, you'd be like, wait a minute, dude. Oh, geez, I might, it's like either things are just going to get completely out of control or, we're just going to have to walk away from this stuff.
Yeah, I hear you, man.
You do?
No, I don't.
Sounds like you're ready. You're ready to end.
I'm ready for it all to end. I wish it even started. So if you want to see all the other things we do, you can go to MySpace /.edu.org.net. and search Crushing Iron Group and follow. No, you can go to if you want to be part of the conversation, which is pretty good often, and you can actually get a Cliff Notes version and never listen to our podcast from Howard Schuyler and his daily podcast review. You can go to Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group and tell us just one small thing that you like about the podcast. It might take you a while to find one, but hey, you can find one. And be a part of the conversation there. And then again, you can go to crushingiron.com to search all things that we do. And then if you want to reach out to Mike directly, because unless this 28-29-year-old works out, he is still available. You can hit him up at crushingiron@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions for me about doing things that are epic, you can send me an epic email, #epic email, to c26coach@gmail.com. We lose listeners, man. With little rants like that, we definitely drop a few listeners, guys. I know I hurt some feelings with that one, but hey, you know what? I love you.
No, yeah, I know you do. We all fall into that. I mean, that's the reality of it. Is like
I'll be honest, we don't all fall into that category.
We all have, I believe. I mean, I've definitely been a weekend warrior. I've definitely done epic workouts, but the reality is like you got to take a step back from yourself once in a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
there's very few people that probably did something epic today. You want to feel non-epic? Go watch the documentary Free Solo, and then never use the word epic ever again.
Yeah, is that free flyer stuff?
Free flyer, or the guy that climbs?
Oh, the climber. I thought this was like what do they call those?
What is it? What's
free
that?
flying?
What is that? That frequent flyer movie?
You get on, the dude that rode around the world in coach.
Yeah, that one.
No, but what's that when they put the wings on? That thing is like ridiculous.
Those are called hang gliders.
No, when you like a flying suit. Have you ever seen those? That is epic. I'll give those guys that because they just fly like birds. They jump off mountains and out of plane. I don't know where the hell they start, but dudes die like 50% of those dudes die. It seems like
that doesn't sound epic. That just sounds stupid and irresponsible. Hey guys, to sum it up, that falls into the category of not doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, definitely. Unless you're just living on the edge, man. Sometimes people got to live on the edge. That's the other part. I get that.
Yeah, I get that.
All right. Well, we will wrap up this episode. Do epic recoveries. Episode number 250.
We'll catch you back on Monday. Hopefully talking about respective conference titles for your Wisconsin Badgers and my Tennessee Volunteers.
Ooh, I know. Actually, I kind of hope we lose on Saturday. We need some rest,
No, you don't. You say that kind of stuff.
Oh, I
like,
know.
Who wants to lose? Everybody says, I'm glad we lost. No,
I know,
you don't.
man.
You want a
but this is like
baby?
Well, on the subject of epic recoveries, I think these guys need a few days off.
They just got it with this week.
They played the last game on Sunday, and now we're going to turn around and
don't be the day off coach now. You don't, because you don't want to. Day offs are so overrated. You lose rhythm, you become stale, and you forget a lot of things. You got to stay sharp.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Oh, the day off coach. Well,
Yeah.
The problem I have is that if we get to Sunday, sometimes they put us on Thursday. I think that's not fair, because we play the last Big Ten.
These kids are made and bred to be college basketball players, and they have all the recovery opportunities that they need. They'll be just fine.
All right. Okay. You're fair. Yeah, they do have Normatex now, so
yeah, see, they're totally fine.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor yet. And we'll see you on Monday.
Monday it is. See you, buddy.
All right.